Yeah.
in St. Hubert. We have all ladies here.
Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting for Monday, January 12th, 2015. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Battanti.
Here.
Mr. Brado.
Here.
Mr. Capral is asked to be excused. Mr. Tominello.
Here.
Mr. York.
Here.
Mr. Witt here. Mr. Verkest.
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including approval of the regular board meeting minutes of December 8, 2014, the special meeting and public hearing minutes of December 1st, 2014, and the special board meeting minutes of December 23rd, 2014, as well as approval of the bills in the amount of $1,474,459.39. You're looking for a motion to approve?
So moved. Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Tominello to approve the consent agenda as presented. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, I didn't hear any amendments. Unless there are any, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the regular agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support. Got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Battanti. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the announcements. We have a few announcements. Board members, our current waste hauling contract with Tringali Sanitation will expire on May 1st, 2015. The Board of Trustees is preparing to solicit bids for the next contract, and we are looking for your input. What additional services would you like? What are your complaints? What can we do better? Please send your ideas via email to trash@harrisontownship.org or through our township social media accounts. You can tweet your thoughts using hashtag #HTTrashTalk or a message on Facebook. Our 2015 Huron-Clinton Metro Park passes are for sale, again at a discounted price for township residents. Passes can be purchased at the Township Administration Building in the Treasurer's Office. The passes are normally $30, but they're $24 for residents and $20 for seniors. And for information on other township events, you can call the supervisor's office, 466-1445, or visit the township website, harrison-township.org. Are there any other announcements? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, item B1, appointments. Board members, we have received applications for reappointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals, or ZBA, from Mr. Archie Lytle and Mr. William Serviel. Mr. Lytle has served on the ZBA for approximately 15 years and served as the chair of the ZBA for several of those years. His engineering and legal background have benefited the ZBA and our residents throughout his tenure. Mr. Serviel has served for approximately 8 years on the ZBA, and his experience as a builder has also been beneficial to the board and our residents. I would recommend that our Board of Trustees reappoint Mr. Archie Lytle and Mr. William Serviel to the ZBA for 3-year terms to expire December 20, 2017.
Make a motion to appoint Mr. Archie Lytle and Mr. William Serviel to the Zoning Board of Appeals for 3-year terms to expire December 20th, 2017.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. York. Is there support?
Support.
All right, support by Mr.
I didn't
Brado.
realize that these guys have served on that long.
Yeah.
Archie, 15 years, wow.
Time flies.
Yep, Mr. Serviel and I
Wow.
think started initially as
Wow.
alternates, but yeah,
Time's flying by.
yes, sir. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I serve on that board, and I'd simply like to say that Mr. Lytle and Mr. Serviel, I believe from my brief exposure, do an excellent job. I think they're very valuable members of that board, and I'd be pleased to see them continue in that capacity.
Excellent. Any other comments? Hearing none and seeing no board comment, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Brado to reappoint Mr. Archie Lytle and Mr. William Serviel to the ZBA for 3-year terms to expire December 20, 2017. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on our agenda, item C1, regards the path maintenance. Board members, late last year, we were notified by the Huron-Clinton Metro Park Authority, or HCMA, that they would no longer maintain the bike paths in our township. For many years, they've done the summertime mowing and fall-time sweeping and wintertime sweeping and plowing. This township board directed the supervisor to solicit bids for this service and work with HCMA to see if we could reach an agreement. We met with Clinton Township, the Macomb County Department of Roads, and HCMA to discuss path, shoulder, and median maintenance, because at the same time that they look to back out of the agreement, or no longer continue the agreement, I should say, with Harrison Township, they had the same message for Clinton Township and also the Department of Roads. For the Department of Roads, they mow the median and maintain the median, summertime. Initially, they had only talked to Clinton Township and Department of Roads to get out, and we're going to continue the relationship with Harrison Township, and at a second look, they decided to stop the relationship with all three. But because of that initial decision, the Macomb County Department of Roads had already gone through their county process of soliciting bids for maintenance. Their low bid for the work for Metro Parkway from Jefferson to Utica Road and a portion of 26 Mile, I can't say how much of that, but roughly an area near Stony Creek, was $160,000 annually. We met with HCMA to try to see if we could reach a deal. Their primary concern was that they were sending their resources outside of their boundaries, and they were neglecting both the median as well as inside in the park because they were stretching themselves thin. HCMA agreed to quote all the work, and when they came back about a rate about 20% lower than what than what the Department Roads was paying. They provided a quote to us and Clinton Township. Ours is attached. They're proposing a 5-year contract primarily because they're saying if they're going to enter into a relationship where they do the maintenance on the median and the shoulder and the paths, they want to purchase the equipment for that, dedicate that equipment, and hire personnel to be dedicated to that work. And they don't want to have a 1-year agreement, have everybody back out, and now they've got equipment and legacy costs or layoff costs, what have you. In addition, part of that discussion, as a result of some of the discussions that we've had here, was the level of care or maintenance that HCMA was providing on the median. As we've discussed here, Metro Parkway is somewhat of a gateway to our community for a lot of the visitors, and the condition of that median maintenance has deteriorated. HCMA agreed, and as well they agreed that with this contract and arrangement they would improve the level of maintenance along Metro Parkway. Through the discussions, one of the things that we talked about was the fact that the contract was a year-end contract, December 31, January 1, end start date. The problem is that's really in the middle of a season. There's primarily 2 seasons of maintenance. There's the summer maintenance, which involves the mowing, and there's the winter maintenance, which involves the plowing. So we agreed that it might make more sense to have a start-end date for the contract that coincided with a period of time when no work is being performed so that we weren't stopping in the middle. So we agreed to say from today's period, we'd go to, I believe it was April 1st. And then, was it April 1st or May 1st? I'm sorry.
May 1st.
May 1st. Okay, so it's through April. And then, so we need a short contract to get us to that through April, and then May 1st we'd begin the 5-year contract. They quoted the rate They have a flat rate for that 5-year period. There is a section of the contract that does allow for either party to get out or to opt out. Oh, I'm sorry, it is April 1. I see here, number 3, term on page 2. Which also happened,
The temporary agreement goes through April.
okay.
That was why I said May, that was what I was looking at. So-
Yeah, and that doesn't coincide with this other one, because it was, saying ending the last day of April 15. So I believe there's a conflict between those two, because page 2 of the primary agreement shows April 1 of 2015 through March 30 of 2020. So there needs to be a clarification. I also believe there was a concern in section 2 that we discussed, that it said that if the authority's costs have increased, the authority would notify the township in writing of the amount of and the reason for the increased costs. Unless we notify them, the increase would occur. They also talked about, under item number 4, termination. In other words, if for whatever reason, if they say, well, we're going to increase the cost because fuel costs have radically changed, and we say, well, we're not agreeable to that, then we would terminate the contract. But they wanted something to say over the next 5 years, if there's something unforeseen, we'd want the ability to adjust. Having said that, we've enjoyed a pretty dependable and cooperative relationship with HCMA over the years. I can't think of a time when we've been at odds or in dispute with them. As a matter of fact, we're only getting to this contract because for many years they've performed this work at anywhere from 10 to 30% of what this cost is. So they've been doing this work for years at a much, much lower rate. So that's really what got us to where we are today.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Does this include, you said mowing the median?
Yeah. Meaning,
would-
yep, hold on, let me answer
yeah.
that. Meaning that HCMA is providing services to 3 municipalities. Harrison Township for the maintenance of our paths, Clinton Township for the maintenance of their paths, and Macomb County Department of Roads for maintenance of the median and the shoulders.
The median's not in our contract.
We're not paying
That-
for the median.
all right,
I saw where you were going in.
Right.
Right, I misunderstood
Yep.
you, that's why I was clarifying that.
Yeah, we're not assuming that cost for the median, but the point is that they've been doing, basically they've been going from, well, let's roughly say property line to property line up and down Metro Parkway for years, maintaining all of it. When paths went in, they said, okay, well now they're still mowing. So for example, there's a section along Metro Parkway where the area there's a clear green space that sort of dips into the 155-acre parcel. And there's a little bench there, a little quiet space. They continue to mow that. We don't send a crew out, we pay them to do that work. They're continuing to do that work. But the idea is that while we were talking about the work that Macomb County Department of Roads is paying on the median, in response to what some residents and what this board discussed, I brought up the issue of the level of maintenance on the median, and HCMA acknowledged that through the years they've not put as much effort into that, and they understand our concerns and agree that with this, they're able to dedicate equipment and additional manpower, basically new employees, to assume that responsibility and improve the level of service. So I only made reference to the median that they're doing it, but it's not a part of our cost. I think the cost to the county was either 125 or 135,000 compared to the 160 that they got through a bidding process. So, answer your question?
I guess I still, at the end there, you said that with this, they're gonna be able to do the median more.
They're going to do a better level.
Who's paying for that median?
Department of Roads is paying for the median. What I was saying was, while we were at the bargaining table, the time to discuss the level of maintenance was when all
No,
three
I
partners
understand,
were
I
there.
understand. So is this $27,000, is that representative of 1/5 of that 120,000?
No.
Or is this just a separate quote from that original 120.
Yep.
Okay, no problem. I'm good.
So the answer is if we exercise this, Department of Roads will be paying 125, if I remember correctly, and I apologize. Clinton Township would be paying 33,000 and change, and we'd be paying 27,000 and change. And that would continue the agreement. And mind you, this isn't just the Metro Parkway path. HCMA also does the additional paths. For example, the path along Bridgeview and the path over the Bridgeview Bridge, they plow that. They literally drive a truck down there. The path that goes all the way out to Lake Shore, they plow that. The area that Mr. Tominello has brought to our attention during the summertime, along South River Road, roughly from maybe say Macomber Street or Detroit Street or that subdivision out to the S-curve, you know, traveling east. Over the last couple of years since that path has been in, the grass has grown long, we bring it up, they cut it, but it gets all over the path. HCMA has been doing that, contracted through Department of Roads. They're saying, we understand that you need a higher level of grooming in that area now because there's a path and people are walking that area, riding their bikes. They'll improve the level of service along South River Road.
So, Mr. Supervisor, I'm glad you brought that up. So, in that span you just referred to, does that include then also from path to the shoulder, or the road, to the road right? So the road right-of-way piece.
Basically.
Okay, because typically when they maintained it, they cut about 3 foot on either side of the path, and then they left from that 3 foot buffer to the curb, they left long.
Right.
And that's where actually the road commission came back.
But
When we called, we had to
right.
call them.
Correct. When we made the, what I learned was, we made the call to the Department of Roads, who then in turn made a call to HCMA. So HCMA had been providing that service.
Okay.
But what we said was that similar to our concerns with the median, that path has now become something more important. There was a time when it was just basically roughly the shoulder in a wetland area, and the level of maintenance kind of reflected the fact that it was, for lack of a better word, kind of untamed land. But we've now made that something that we want to see groomed at a higher level, probably it's fair to say similar to the path along Metro Parkway.
So if you could check on one more thing, and I know you can't tonight, so maybe you can fill me in tomorrow. There's also a guardrail that runs on South River Road just as it comes from the marsh into the subdivisions. That has never been groomed because you need to actually weed whack underneath the guardrails. So there's a guardrail over by Venetian, and then west of Venetian on
the S-curve, right?
On the S-curves.
Yep.
Those have never been trimmed. No one has ever gotten out with a weed whacker.
Right.
And just on the guardrail, they're sort of being overgrown by weeds.
Right.
So
And
can you check if that's going to be part of that as well?
absolutely, and I can't, the short answer to your question is I can't say to you today that I know with certainty that that's included in here. We discussed in general the issue relative to the level of maintenance, and that's what HCMA said. In other words, they said, for the money we're receiving, we can't give it the attention that it deserves, so therefore we'd rather not do it and have disappointment. So, as a general rule, we said we're looking at, we like the way Metro Parkway is maintained, the Metro Parkway path. We'd like to see that level of maintenance in the rest of our paths, and they agreed and said that's something that they could provide in this. So I feel confident. You know, there might be some growing pains come June 1, but I feel confident that it's their intent to purchase equipment, hire personnel to perform this work, and dedicate, you know, the time that's necessary to do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Supervisor, I have some comments as well. Are we gonna do that now or at board
Anytime.
comment? What? Now?
Yeah, if you got questions, I mean, you know, we don't always follow the rule that we've got to have a motion before we enter the discussion, so there's no reason to change that now.
Thank you. So Mr. Brado and I met with the Beautification Commission last week to begin some high-level discussions about the whole notion of Metro Parkway and getting it to a little bit higher level. And as you know, the Beautification Commission does a great job in the township. They created and maintain several gardens. They present recognition awards to residents. They host events, all in an effort to improve the whole visual aspect of the community, and we really appreciate that work.
Absolutely.
What we talked about was to try to get some ideas as to how we could upgrade the look of the parkway from 94 to the park itself. And later this month, the Beautification Commission is going to meet and come up with a few options and present that to us for consideration. But it was also clear, and I bring this up now because we talk about, although this contract is about the pathway, we talk about improved level of maintenance to the median itself. And that really becomes incumbent upon us through your office to ensure that things like mulch around the trees, better weed whacking, better attention to the curbs is done. Now, I'm encouraged to see that they've agreed to improve the level of maintenance, but I also think that it's incumbent upon us through your office to sort of define that and to, you know, hold them, given the fact that they're likely to have these contracts, to hold them more accountable for it. I'm encouraged by that, but I think nonetheless we still have to somehow focus attention to some specifics. So I believe that the Beautification Commission is going to present us some ideas as to what they can do, maybe with some assistance, but we're going to need to work through your office to be more specific about what they will do relative to the improved level of maintenance.
Okay, all right.
And I don't think that what they're planning on doing is maintenance, so to speak. It's more plantings and design.
The Beautification Commission.
correct.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So it sort of fell, it fell into sort of two areas.
Yeah,
One
exactly.
thing about planning and design, another about maintenance that we would be more directly involved with.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we certainly don't want them to plant things and then have HCMA weed whack it
Yeah, yeah.
to death.
And one way or another, we're gonna end up paying someone to do some level of work, whether it be a township employee, an HCMA employee, or a private contractor, to perform a certain amount of maintenance in these areas along the path and so forth. Based on past experience, we have had a relationship with HCMA, both plowing and mowing along our path. And I would have to say that the experience that we have with HCMA as a provider of service has been very positive. We don't find ourselves, you know, frequently calling them saying, hey, you haven't been out there, you haven't done this, you haven't performed this work, or the work is performed poorly. You know, sweeping, plowing, that sort of thing. They're out there pretty quick. We have had experiences with private contractors where we've had issues with the level of service performed on this kind of maintenance. And I say that only because if I had to enter into some sort of a working relationship with with some service provider to cooperatively maintain, say, median gardens along Metro Parkway, my experience would suggest that we'd have a high degree of success working with HCMA as opposed to maybe some of our other service providers.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion to direct the supervisor and clerk to execute the path maintenance agreement with the Huron-Clinton Metro Park Authority for a 5-year period at a cost of $27,833.15 annually.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support?
Support.
All right. And then just a clarification, two things there. One was, the reason why I'd asked for that motion is literally the contract shows that the supervisor and clerk are to sign the contract. But also, when it comes time to execute the contract, to say, hey, you know what, there's a difference between this April 30 and April 1st date. There was a suggestion that they said, well, do we have to give you 30 days notice or 90 days notice? You know,
90 might be nicer, so you could get somebody else on the job.
correct. And so they had made a proposal to change that to 90. You know, if they come back with a you know, not a material change that's of a limited nature like that, and Mr. Huth is in agreement, you know, that was the intent of saying that we wanted to execute the contract, you know, give us that authority to say, hey, wait a minute, this date is wrong, right, to make those corrections. So, okay, we've got a motion by Mr. Talman and support from Mr. Batanti. Yep.
Would we want to include in the motion to also approve that stub agreement?
And I thought that I'd included that, and I see that it wasn't in here, and that's my mistake. I put both in here.
So I guess I'd offer an amendment to the motion to include the agreement from December 11th, 2014 through,
Presumably April 1.
let's say April 1st, 2015, at the rates enclosed in the agreement. It's hourly rates attached based on work.
So I'll approve the amendment to my motion.
And we'd like to, put an emphasis on using, the labor in part 4.2, the seasonal labor rather than the full-time labor. We'd like them to encourage the
Yeah,
use
right.
of the
That's right.
seasonal labor, please.
Well, and the reality is that seasonal labor is typically college
I
help.
know.
It's summertime. So the
There's
winter.
a big difference. It's $12 to $50.
Absolutely, right. And what that really stems from is that, I mean, those are the rates that they've used for college kids. They're saying, if we're gonna make this commitment, do this improved level of service, their intent is to go out and, hire dedicated people to perform this work. But certainly, yeah, we like the lower rate. Any other discussion?
Did
I do have a
Mr.
question.
Batanti continue to support?
Oh, I'm sorry, yep, continued support, Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Yard?
In the stub agreement, Rob, in section 2, are we providing insurance for their employees? Is that what that says? Or am I reading that wrong? I mean, I could be reading it wrong, but some of this legalese gets twisted, so.
Darren, I caught my eye on the principal agreement, where in the principal agreement, we're saying, and I know that's not directly on point here, but in the principal agreement, we're saying we're each providing insurance and indemnifying each other
Right.
for things that they can't sue, somebody can't sue HCMA for something one of our people does and vice versa. Here, this is kind of just a little bit of a boilerplate, just saying that they want as much coverage in place as possible, so they're gonna have their own policy, and they wanna make sure we're covered as well. What would happen if there was an incident would be, the parties would have to, the insurance companies would likely slug it out as to whose
Right.
agent caused the problem. So I think the intention is that each municipality covers their own employees.
But what's funny is it says the township shall provide comprehensive general liability insurance. If you're doing that, wouldn't we in this relationship, we're hiring somebody.
Right,
Wouldn't we ask them for their insurance
Right,
as
and we-
well?
well.
That's what caught my
what-
eye is odd.
Yeah, no, I understand that. The reason it was drafted this way is from their perspective, they know they have what they need. They don't know we have our own insurance. Our protection is really the fact that they're such a big entity and so collectible that we really wouldn't have a problem if they did something wrong. But vice versa may be true. There could be a situation where there's a claim against us without insurance. There's an issue as to whether or not we're capable of paying it. So I understand your point. Why isn't it there?
It's just worded
Okay.
different than what
Yeah.
we normally see when we're hiring a vendor.
I agree with you, but the assurances the township has and the master agreement's good, and for the short term, we know that they're such a big entity, we would be able to collect from them if one of their employees did something wrong.
I'm done.
Okay, any other questions, comments, board comment? Hearing none, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
William Bardell, 18-year resident. As I look at this, I'm not seeing that the price is exactly bad or good, but what I want to say is, so I'm wondering exactly how many bids you guys received, and I know as far as the center medium, I can drive down Metro Parkway and I can go west to Unica, and I see a company called Landslide, and I see them doing a normal basic landscaping 101 where you have the wood chips around the trees, so when you weed whack around the trees, you don't kill the tree, you know, weed whack the bark off and kill the tree, choke out the tree. And I see that on Mound Road, that I believe it was Landslide, and down Metropolitan Parkway, from Utica all the way to I-75, I see Landslide. It's a private contractor, so I'm just wondering is the road commission going to hire Landslide to continue on and go straight down Metropolitan Parkway all the way to Jefferson? So my first question is, how many bids did you have? And is indeed the Huron-Clinton Metro Authority the lowest bid? You know, one thing is good to have competition from the private sector and the public sector. A little competition that way makes for a better product. So I'm just wondering, is that center medium going to be like Hall Road, like Mound? Let's not say Gratiot because they may have a shopping district there, so let's forget them. Okay, 8 Mile. Okay, but a normal median, you know, a normal, detailed, normal job. And as far as the road commission, I don't think they're totally off the hook when you looked at a ½ inch of gravel on the curbs and the same Big Gulp cup sitting in the sewer there in August, and they still didn't have a street sweeper out there on Metropolitan Parkway. So I don't think the road commission's off the hook either. So I don't know if this is a good price or not. But I'm just wondering how many bids you got and how many private sector bids you got for this. And like I said, I see Landslide, they're big red trucks, and I see them do a fantastic job. I don't know anybody from that company, but I see them do a fantastic job down Mound Road, down Metropolitan Parkway. They do a clean, normal, regular 101 landscaping job. And I think that's what we deserve, a normal landscaping job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Serville, resident. As far as the scope of the work, I think that's a cheap price, but I'm not sure we should be paying for it, especially on the parkway itself. It is called Metro Parkway, went to Metropolitan Beach. But if they are maintaining all these other bike paths, then I think that probably that's a fair number. But I'd like to point out something. If they're advocating all of the responsibility for that road, for all of the responsibility, they no longer take care of the surface, they no longer take care of the grass cutting, they no longer take care of any of it without being paid, it's time to talk to them about additional road cuts, access points. It's no longer a limited access highway that belongs strictly to them. When I was a young man, we used to come out here and the rangers actually patrolled and issued tickets all the way to Van Dyke, where the name changes. I believe that's where it changes, but that's where they patrolled to. And occasionally you'll still see those people out there. So I think it's an opportune time to talk to them about getting 1 or 2 more access points because they're sorely needed here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Karcheski, resident. You know, I walk to and from work. I walk all over the township. I ride my bike in the summertime. One of the things I noticed that riding the bike is, now when you say maintenance, when you're riding the bike and the trees are coming down and you get hit in the head, I usually land up calling you and you have one of our maintenance men go out there and trim the trees. Now, are they going to be trimming the trees or is our gentleman going to be doing that? One of the other things I noticed, as you were saying, the weed whacking around the, we have benches up there. They don't do a good job over there. Also, with the snow that has come down here, you now put a sidewalk. They close the roadway over there next to the bank, Flagstar Bank, and they put a sidewalk in there. They don't, when they sweep shovel the snow, sweep the snow, whatever they call it, they don't do that section up to the bank. The bank does to the end of their sidewalk, and then the rest is not done. Could you ask about that? Okay, now, my other question is, this is another thing that I found for walking, is the, in front of McDonald's, not on the side of 16 Mile, right on Crocker. Is that sidewalk owned by McDonald's? Is it owned by us? Who owns that? Because Kroger does so much, or the people that
Mariners
do the
Point,
maintenance from the
Shopping mall.
yeah, shopping mall. Thank you. But when it comes to that sidewalk at McDonald's, it doesn't get done. So that, you know, and I would go into McDonald's and the lady goes, well, that's not our sidewalk. So could you see who does that, and maybe if that's part of it, they do that too, or talk to McDonald's or the shopping center and get that sidewalk done. That's one of the other problems that I notice too. Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue Keene from the Beautification Commission. I just want to let you know that the Beautification Commission's kind of pumped about beautifying our medians. When we met with our trustees, Bill Batanti and David Brado, we had some pretty exciting moments where our representatives on the Beautification Commission are real interested in creating some beautiful perennial gardens. I think the phrase we coined was to say that you've arrived in Harrison Township. So we look forward to presenting you with some plans for gardens right at the initial median at 16 and Crocker, that would be next to Knox, and then across the street where you actually enter onto Metro Parkway beyond Crocker. So if you'd like, we can bring some kind of presentation to you in the future, and that's what we're working on at our next meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jim Senstock, 31698 San Juan. One of the earlier speakers brought up an issue that really I hope is going to be addressed. My understanding of when this was going to be bid out, that it was going to be bid out, not talk to HMA, not talk to the road commission. It was going to be bid out to people. Looking at this, first off, it's $27, almost $28,000, and I don't know what we paid before, but I can see why HMA jumped on this one. Boy, it's nice to get that much money again. I took a quick look at the breakdown and the quote of their costs, and I know you didn't get a bid from an outside contractor, because I can figure out the calculations here and tell you that the contractor, the outside contractor, would have charged you about $15,000. You're getting $27,000. And that's assuming there are 3 employees. That's assuming using the hours that they use. That's not even considering the gas. The cost of the groundmaster, Toro, is covered by the contractor, not by us. Are they going to be buying a new one every year? Because that's the way they've costed it into this cost. $2,700 or $2,100 they're going to buy every year. Provisional and full and provisional employee for $23,000. Is that 2 employees? Is that 3? It doesn't really say, but I would assume when it says full and provisional that it's 2. In my calculations, I figured 3 people working on this. And you're still gonna, you could save probably almost half. So if you tell us and you tell the residents that you're going to go out for bids, do it. Don't come back with this, which is basically justifies Huron Metro Authority getting another source of income into their coffers. Shame on Clinton Township if they agree to it, and shame on you guys if you agree to this also without going out and finding a private contractor and seeing what they're going to charge. Because this is way over what a private contractor will charge. Anybody wants to see my calculations, I'll show you them. But the fact of the matter is we're getting raped here, and you guys are allowing it. Don't come to us later on and say you need more money. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. I'll try the best I can to answer the resident questions and comments. The first question was how many bids did we receive? And to be clear, we did not go out for bid on this. While we were in discussions with HCMA, HCMA came back and said, we'll submit bids. Is Department of Roads going to use landslide from Utica to Jefferson? No, HCMA will be performing their work from Utica Road to Jefferson. Department of Roads has already exercised their agreement with HCMA. I've got a note about limited cuts on Metro Parkway, and I'm trying to remember what that resident.
Yeah, so what that is, and that brings up another question, and maybe in your discussions you've heard this. Historically, and since the beginning of Metropolitan Parkway, that has been owned by the HCMA.
Oh, right, limited cut. I'm thinking of cuts,
right.
I remember. I was thinking of grass cuts, not road
I guess that
cuts.
leads me to ask the same question, which ties in with that. Has HCMA now given the maintenance and everything of that road to the Department of Roads?
Right.
Because if the Department of Roads is paying for it, I can't see them paying for it if they don't own it.
Right.
I guess that's
right. So here's the
ties in.
Correct. When I was thinking limited cuts, meaning cutting the grass.
Yep.
But the comment was road cuts.
Right.
And so the answer to your question is, I can't tell you when or what the agreement is, but Department of Roads is responsible for Metro Parkway. They're responsible for the maintenance. Metro Parkway is no different than, say, I don't know, Jefferson or any other road. HCMA is not responsible for that road. I can't tell you when that happened or when it occurred, but Department of Roads, however they shifted that responsibility, they're responsible for maintaining the physical road. They're responsible for road cuts and say, for example, they didn't have to get HCMA's permission to put a right turn lane at Metro Parkway and Crocker. HCMA is responsible for Crocker and Metro Parkway. So the issue of limited cuts is an issue with Department of Roads and not HCMA. It could be that there was a time that HCMA had that responsibility. I can't tell you what that history is, but ever since I've been involved, HCMA is not our source for, say for example, maybe a year or two ago, there was a pretty rough spot on westbound Metro Parkway at about Shoreline, where you were driving along and you kind of caught air. There was a big chunk that was heaved. I didn't call HCMA, I called DOR. They went out there, they sawed it out, busted it out, and repoured it and fixed it. So HCMA is not providing that service. Is HCMA going to trim the trees along the bike path? That wasn't a part of the discussion. I mean, that is to say, if somebody's out there and they perform it, that's fine, but typically if there's tree issues, we've had our maintenance folks perform that service. Trimming, yeah, yep. Trimming around the benches, those kinds of things are things that we discussed in that meeting, saying that, you know, similar to what the Beautification Commission resident talked about, this is sort of a gateway. You know, the bike path there are folks who visit our township and maybe jog or bike or rollerblade up and down the Metro Parkway path, the Freedom Trail, and into the beach. Some of them choose to spend their dollars at Mariners Point Shopping Center because they might choose to park there and ride up and down there. That path is the reason some people visit our township. I think it's a positive image for our township, and the short answer is, yeah, we want them to improve that level of work. The sections of sidewalk between the bank and Acacia, which is new, you know, that's something we need to talk to, you know, both the bank and HCMA to say, can you get that, right? That's kind of an odd zone. The section in front of McDonald's, you know, I don't see where that's a township responsibility. That's a function of talking to business owners. Now, again, having said that, I don't know that I know we don't have a sidewalk ordinance that I understand where we go out and take some level of enforcement. But I think if we were to bring this issue to the attention of Mariners Point and McDonald's, it would seem to be beneficial to them to make it easier for residents to walk to their retail locations, and I'm happy to bring that forward. And
more importantly, it's a liability issue. Somebody were to trip and fall, you know.
Well, I don't want to assign, the point is that there's definitely value in trying to get them to do it. There's no doubt about that. We agree. In response to beautification, I'm pumped too. The notion that folks are, I just can't say, the notion that there's a group of volunteers who say, I'm so excited to go out and perform work, and we know from other projects an incredibly beautiful and high caliber level of work for free to make our township great. I mean, I'm glad you're pumped, and I know I speak for our board and our residents that we're excited too. And then to the last comments relative to bidding out, the choice. Well, first, one of the questions was what we paid before. In my, I think the most recent bill that we had for the prior year's service was about $7,900. That's what sticks in my mind that recently came across my desk. They're saying to us they cannot continue to do the work for $7,900. That's the problem. The reason for the 5-year contract, what they'd asked us to do was if they're going to, in essence, what HCMA, their position is all 3 municipalities approached HCMA with the understanding that as a municipal partner, we're saying that the long-term relationship we've had with them has been good, but our only complaint has been the level of work in the last few years. They're saying they like the long-term relationship also, and they agree the level of work has been poor, but they're saying they simply can't afford to do it for the rate. All 3 municipalities, the county, Clinton Township, and Harrison Township, acknowledged that we recognize that $7,900 is not a sufficient amount of money to perform that work. But we approach this from the perspective that if all you did was take the $160,000 that was the low bid through the Department of Roads, for $160,000 you ought to be able to go out and buy a tractor and employ somebody full-time to mow and plow.
I'll do $460,000 with my own Bushmaster toy.
Right. Well, I can't, let's say this. I can't speak to whether $160,000 is an incredible number or a realistic number or a poor number. What I can say is we know through the competitive bidding process that that was the low bid, just to do the median maintenance. For not much more than that, HCMA is agreeing to do the median maintenance, the path maintenance, and plowing of all those paths. So when you take the, I think it was 125, 37, and 33 and 27, which is 60, that's 185. So they're saying 160 is what they did it for $25,000. They're not only going to do all that, they're going to also mow the path all the way out to Utica Road on Clinton Township's responsibility, ours. The other paths we have down the spillway, plowing along Bridgeview, mowing along South River, you know, they're agreeing to perform that work as well. So, you know, this board has the right to say we don't want to enter into an agreement with HCMA. We can go out for competitive bids. From the time I received this, through a context that we had, we'd asked, can we get a quote on this? The problem is this isn't something where you say, hey, there's a parking lot over there, how much to plow that parking lot? This involves bringing in contractors and establishing a bid spec saying you've got this many miles of path, this much area needs to be mowed. The guy says, well, I can't see it, it's under snow right now. The folks that we called indicated that, the folks that do 4-season maintenance indicated that with the snowfall recently, they're kind of busy, and they wouldn't be able to get a quote to us for some time. This board certainly has the option to say, we don't want to do this, exercise this, until such time as we have a chance to go out for competitive bids. The folks that I talked to indicated, similar to the one resident, that the price certainly seemed to be well within what they'd expect to pay, probably less than what they'd expect to pay. But ultimately, what we're looking to do is continue a relationship with a trusted provider, and make sure that we properly fund the level of service that we expect. And through this relationship, we ask the people there's only one provider that's ever done this work throughout the life of this, and that's been HCMA. When it used to be their responsibility, they mowed it. There's never been anyone else who's mowed this, plowed this, or swept this area or this path or anything. They took a look at their hours, and they said, this is what the scope of work is, and this is what we can do it for. Department of Roads said it's cheaper than what we had quoted. We're happy to do that. You're beating the private market. So yes, we'll agree to do it. We can opt in, or we can opt out, or we can go for other bids. If we go for other bids, I won't be able to get those prices probably for a couple months. By the time we draft something, got to give enough time for people to go out, be able to take a look at the work, say, well, I can't see it, it's covered in snow, and go through that process. It was my understanding that the Board of Trustees had said they'd hope to continue the relationship with HCMA. And that's the basis under which I approach this. We talked to the folks at Clinton Township because they do have a DPW. They believe their portion of the work was well within the scope that they estimated it to be. They thought their $33,000 was a good deal. And Department of Roads felt the same way. So.
Mr. Supervisor, there's a quick point of clarification. You had mentioned about the beautification committee doing some work at no cost. And I know that maybe you meant labor was no cost, but there probably will be a cost. They're going to submit a kind of a good, better, best proposal to us.
Yep.
And there will be some costs for the material that they have to use.
Oh, sure.
Right. I just don't want anybody to think that they're doing all this for nothing.
No.
We know they're frugal and they're very cost conscious, but
Right.
I didn't want to put them on the hook and make them win.
No, you're right, absolutely right, yep.
I don't want to, split hairs here.
Mm-hmm.
But, fuel stays the same, maybe they can cut us a deal. I get that you're doing.
Fuel's not gonna stay the same.
There's a market. No, I'm just saying it's a market rate.
Yeah,
right?
it's not going to stay the same.
I would assume that they're not going to charge us the $3. They're actually probably paying, like us, they're probably not paying tax on the fuel. I would assume.
But remember, this is a 5-year contract, so they have to average this based on,
It's going to be going up.
past costs.
Well, but it looks like there's.
There was a time last year when 310 was a poor number to include in a quote,
Right,
310 was a deal.
That's what I mean, it was a bad number for them to include in the quote. Now, mind you,
They
that's
change
only
them every
2,000
year.
of the
No,
27,000.
they change them every year, that's what I'm saying. Maybe, it's splitting hairs, it's a couple $100, it's not,
Right, right.
it's.
So the total cost of their fuel, they're estimating to be about 2,000.
Right, it's not,
Right.
so I said, I'm not trying to split hairs,
No.
I just, want to get what
Right.
you pay for, right? If fuel's $1.70, more than happy to pay $1.70, if it's $4, to pay $4.
So the
Market rate.
The question I have is that the ground master, I believe, which is the cutting deck, so does that mean that, isn't that a one-time cost? Isn't that a sunk cost?
Yeah, the cost of that equipment is not $2,000. That's the
Okay.
cost over
So
a
is that
5-year period.
That's an amortization for one of those over a 5-year period?
Correct, and it's not just amortized, it's the total, what they looked at is they looked at the amount of equipment that they would dedicate to the project, spread across 3 customers,
Okay.
right?
Oh, got it.
I was gonna say, that's a pretty cheap. I was
Correct.
trying to picture in my mind what kind of tractor you can get for $2,000 that's gonna cut the median.
Right.
So, that makes a lot more sense.
Mr.
that it's
Supervisor, I
10
would,
grand.
excuse me, Terry.
No, go ahead.
I could see where, it's certainly conceivable that this isn't the absolute lowest amount of money. I mean, it's conceivable. But I would also concede that I believe that there's a benefit in coordinating the maintenance of the median with the pathways between the county, our township, and Clinton Township. I would hope that there's a value to having the entity do that, and also the relationship that we can possibly bring to bear to improve the level of service. I would hope that that by having this done by one entity, that we could come to some sort of agreement about what the level of maintenance should be, what the standard should be, and deal with one entity. So I would acknowledge that it's likely that there could be a lesser bid, but I'm in this instant, I'm comfortable with the fact that we'll deal with one entity and hold that one entity to a higher standard. But I think it's incumbent upon us to do that.
Well, so to expound on that, in the near future, we're going to be talking about bids received for lawn maintenance for the township properties. We've got, you know, a handful of parks that we need. We've got this campus, you know, other township properties that need regular ongoing mowing. In 4 years that I've been supervisor, we've contracted that work to 2 different contractors. We've gone through that competitive bid process twice in my time, or I should say we've gone through that once in my time. We've dealt with the low bidder, 2 different low bidders. Both instances, we've had regular recurring issues with the level of maintenance that we receive. And so when I think of the rate that we're paying for our campus and park maintenance now, for just mowing, it's $15,000. That's not trimming, that's not shoulder work, that's not decks that drop down, that's dropping a truck and buzzing back and forth on a zero-turn style commercial mower. But through that process, we have folks at the T-ball fields that say, or Trombley Park saying, kids are tripping because the grass is long, nobody mowed it. We've had issues with the grass cutting around this campus and some other issues. And to your point, I think they were the low bid. I'm going to tell you it was right around 15 grand. We had quotes for that same package of work as high as, I think in that package, over $30,000. So the low was 15, and I gotta be honest with you, it's really a good price. But we've got $15,000 worth of mowing done when it was performed. We got the low bid. So no small part of what we're talking about here is one minute we're talking about we want to improve the level of service, and we need somebody who's going to understand that and do that. We go to that service provider and they say, we recognize that we just can't do it for the price we're being paid, so we'd like to stop doing that work and send you out into the open market to see what you can find. And to your point, although we've talked to folks in this industry that say, you know, they think that's a good price, it's true that if we go out to the market, there could be someone who says, well, hey, it's a matter of public record. They said they'd do it for 27 grand. Maybe someone says, oh, I can do it for 25. But maybe the caliber of work we get is not near the caliber of work that we know HCMA can provide and has provided throughout that time. So, you know, I'm comfortable bringing this before the board because I perceive HCMA to be a good quality municipal partner. If there's an issue with trimming, if there's an issue with the level of maintenance, say along South River, I don't expect the same response from HCMA that I get from some of the folks that might be the low bidders on the regular grass maintenance that we receive. When the other issue is several sections of this path, I'm going to say, are more like an urban path. They interface with property owners and residents in the township. These are areas that might be plowed or mowed near somebody's home, or literally plowed in front of somebody's drive. And throughout the history that we've had a relationship with HCMA, we know their employees have regularly been responsive to resident needs or issues. We work well together.
Well, why don't we take a vote and see how it turns out?
That's fine. Is there any further discussion? I presume a roll call vote would be in order?
No.
Okay. All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by...
Somebody else wants one, go ahead. But
Okay.
I'm good.
A motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Batanti to direct the supervisor and clerk to execute the path maintenance agreement with HCMA for a 5-year period at a cost of $27,833.15 annually, as well as what was referred to as the stub agreement from December to this contract. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Board. We'll open up the floor for public comments.
The game does start in 59 minutes, just for the record.
Are you coming up? Go ahead.
Bill Serville, resident. Before I get to the handout, I'd like to make a couple of comments about the agreement you just entered into. First off, if it's possible, I think November 1st would be a much better date. Last spring, we had grass growing for 3 weeks before they started cutting, before the contract was entered into, you know, before the start date for the contract, because we had an early spring. Sometimes we get snow after April 1st. So that's not the best date. So you could prorate it no matter what date it is, but I think the first, that's what the trash hauler uses to cut off the yard waste, because everything's stopped growing by then and we rarely have any snow before then. The other thing is, I believe Darren brought up a good point. I think that it would behoove us to have the attorney check into that clause about the insurance. I didn't get a chance to read that, so I didn't know what it was. But one other comment, most people that push snow do not do it by the push, they do it by the season. They hope it doesn't snow much. So, you know, for the snow itself, probably $27,000 might be a number that you'd have to pay if you wanted to get something good. You got quite a few miles of path, and it's not all the same width, so that you got a truck driving down there with a plow trying to do the 10-foot path, and when he gets to the 4-foot sidewalk, he can't drive that truck there anymore. So I'm not so sure that going out and trying to find a private contractor would be the best thing. I normally agree with Jim, but this time I don't. Now to go on to what I handed out to you. I've been a builder for almost 40 years, and I have yet to ever see a discharge of lien on anything if there wasn't a lien to start with. The township seems to think that there is no lien on lateral fees, but yet I just found out in the spring of 2013 that 2 houses that I did build, there was a discharge of lien recorded with the Register of Deeds from Macomb County. This is a problem. Evidently there was some kind of resolution that was adopted, and it's an ordinance 100 and 104, I believe it is. It's mentioned in one of those attachments. But it conflicts with both the discharge of lien and I believe with state law. So I am making a claim against the township for, if this had been recorded when I bought this property for $100,000, the woman paid $35,000 in fees. I'm not sure how much of that was SAD for the road and how much of it was penalties for back taxes. But when I saw that number, I just assumed an SAD was for everything. I didn't find out till later the SAD was only for the road and not for the utilities. That's asinine. Had whoever was in charge, I guess that would be Chuck Pierce at that time, should have made an SAD for everything. You would have collected that money now. You got pipe in the ground over there that's never going to get paid for. There's 160 lots in that subdivision, and better than half of them have been vacant since 1927. How many of them do you think are going to get built on? They're postage stamp lots that are usually about 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. Some of them have utilities between the 2 streets, and you'd have to move wires, and quite frankly, it's a low rent district. The second issue that I have is AEW was in charge of that the township hired AEW to do the paving there, and they also ran the utilities. I built 2 houses there. On Erie Street, they put the sewer right down the middle of the road. My understanding is there was some talk here about paving, that maybe the county would kick in some money for the paving because there was something there before. I don't know what was there before because I'd never been in that sub until I bought the lots. But I assume that's the reason why it was put down the middle instead of putting it on the edge of the road like's normal. That said, they put the leads in. The sewer was 13 to 14 foot deep. They put the leads so high, I couldn't get the sewer underneath the basement floor. I had to penetrate the sidewall 18 inches and hang it off of the ceiling like you do a septic field. A lot of extra work. This particular lot that I have left is on a different street. It's part of the same parcel, but there's 3 streets that surround this property. And on Waterford, the sewer is it's underneath the ditch adjacent to the road. Mr. Axel tells me that it is accessible. I'm requesting that the township lower that lead. I shouldn't be responsible for it. As a private contractor, I'm not allowed to work in the road right of way. The township is. I've talked to Mr. Axel about this, and when I made a verbal request that he do this, when I did talk to him, he said, short answer, I'm not doing it. I talked to him last Friday, or Thursday. What generated this was that I asked him why I hadn't gotten anything in writing as I requested from him, and he asked me to put it in writing, and he would respond in writing. I had also talked to Mr. Huth probably 2 meetings ago. He didn't promise a timeline, but he said he would get back to me. I just thought it would be the best thing to put this in writing for both issues, and so here we are. I'd appreciate some type of a consideration on this, and also, despite my issue, everybody has the same problem. You have pipe in the ground all over the place. Vacant lots are sold. You don't collect these lateral fees because of that resolution, and you don't have the money in the water sewer fund to put more pipe in the ground. When a property is traded hands, you should change that resolution. If in fact it is legal, it should be changed so that you can collect those lateral fees when there's a change of ownership of that property. I do know that if it was a SAD, that you lose that money if that goes to foreclosure. You actually lose those fees. This particular one, I'm told it was done out of the enterprise fund, the water and sewer work, whatever water and sewer work they did. This particular lot, they put both water and sewer. My other 2, they only put, I believe they only put water there. There was already sewer. At any rate, I'd appreciate response in writing on this, and I also need a fairly timely one because I have a variance on this lot that expires in mid-March. I need to know what I'm going to do. The lot is appraised at $11,000, which makes it a value of $22,000 on the open market. I've had a sign on it since 2004, never even had one call. But the lateral fees alone are $8,840. That's another issue, which I don't want to get into now, but that's a ridiculous amount of money to spend on a $22,000 lot before I even dig a hole in the ground. Thank you.
Thank you.
William Bardell, 18-year resident. I want to talk a little bit before I talk about this Downtown Development Authority. I want to talk about the election coming up in May. As you know, in 2012, I believe it was 2012, and we were elected, 2014, excuse me. We were elected our supposed Republican governor again, and he has proposed a 17% increase in sales tax. Now, I don't know if you know what that means, but you don't have to be a math genius to understand 8th grade shop math. So if you say 1 is what percent of 1 divided by 6, you got 0.166. That's 16.6% increase in sales tax. Again, you don't have to be a math genius to know 8th grade shop math. So our Republican governor is gonna wanna be charging everybody 17% sales tax increase for everybody to enjoy, for the roads. Now, he's already taxing the internet. There's gonna bring more taxes than you would ever imagine on the internet, number one. Number two, if you vote for this, in this $10 million election we're having in May, you're also voting for the gas tax increase that we would have normally, but it's gonna be on the wholesale level. So naturally, that's gonna be moved to the resale level. So I would urge you to vote no on that, 17%. I don't know if you have kids just starting out, or you don't feel that 17% sales tax increase is a conservative value, then I would certainly vote no on it. Because all they have to do is prioritize the roads, and then of course you're getting all kinds of money from this internet sales, more than you would ever think. Second thing I want to talk about real quick is the Downtown Development Authority. A downtown development, a DDA may own, lease, operate, and license property and buildings. The municipality can acquire property by eminent domain and transfer the ownership to the DDA if the property is deemed necessary to achieve a stated public purpose of the DDA. They can also levy up to 2 mills in taxes with populations under 1 million. The DDA can also borrow money in anticipation of these funds. One of the disadvantages of a downtown development authority is vacant and unimproved land does not disqualify from the DDA district. Therefore, vacant land which adjoins and or separates the existing business district may be included in the DDA. This could encourage sprawl, especially where business areas are widely separated. This is the very opposite objective of the DDA legislation. If somebody wants to buy a piece of property, the year's 2015, if they want to buy a piece of property, they can use their AutoCAN, make a PowerPoint presentation, bring it to the Planning Commission, and away you go. This vision is not the vision of this township. This vision is the vision of our newly elected Macomb County executive. This is not our vision, okay? You know, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, when I water skied every day out here in the beach at Lake St. Clair, yeah, those were some glory days. You know, if Mr. Hackle wants lake property, he needs to go buy lake property and get half the house for twice the money. He needs to go get a taste of it. This is not our vision, and you guys all know this is not our vision in this township. This is Mark Hackle's vision. This is not Mr. Hackle's township. This is our township. Our taxes need to go to our stuff, not someone else's legacy and someone else's vision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Karczewski, resident. I have a question. On the fire department, did you sign a contract with them or not? Because I read in the minutes, you sign a contract, but then in the paper it says there's no contract. So I'd like to know the answer to that one, please. And second of all, I think I come here almost every single year and ask you a couple times a year about having a sidewalk ordinance. And here we are again. Winter is here, the snow is here, and again, the property owners, you put sidewalks on the main streets, or you ask them to, you know, you put sidewalks there, they're not being maintained. They take the snow from their parking lot, and they don't care if the sidewalks are clean in front of their building. They just don't care. I think I come every single year and let you know this. Again, you have property right on Ballard. Can you please tell, and it's not just me, there are people that walk that sidewalk every single day on Ballard. If you don't believe me, go and look. You can see the tracks there. Can you tell me why we're not cleaning our own sidewalks off, and then we're going to ask somebody to clean their sidewalks? I really think we need a sidewalk ordinance. We are getting more and more sidewalks here in the township. I remember a couple years ago, you were going through the ordinance. I came up and asked then. Again, the sidewalks are not being cleaned properly. People have to walk in the street. Why? You have kids that the buses do not come down the side streets. Our children are left off right there in Jefferson. Eddie's Driving is closed. They don't maintain that sidewalk. The property next to it parks their cars so that no parent could be there if they want to pick up their kids. They won't let anybody in their parking lot. Okay, so now there's no place for the parents to go and pick up the kids if they wanted to. Okay, now the kids get off that bus in all the snow when they shovel it off the street, it goes onto the sidewalk there. Nobody maintains it. Now they walk down Ballard. Where do they have to walk? In the middle of the street, because the sidewalk that is there is not cleaned. Can we at least, you own part of the property. I believe it's Valgier that owns the other part of that sidewalk. Get them to maintain that sidewalk so our kids don't have to walk in the street. It's bad enough they have to walk in the street to catch that bus when it's pitch dark. And you know for a fact there are people that speed down every street in this township. And Ballard's no differently. And I wish they wouldn't, but they do. Are we going to wait till someone is hit, someone falls, and then they're going to sue you because they had to walk in the street because you won't clean the sidewalk? You have them come and clean the parking lot. They do a wonderful job. Let them go right down that sidewalk and clean it. Talk to Valgiers about, I believe they're the ones, whatever that, there's so many different names on that through the years. I'm not sure what it is anymore, who owns that. But it's that store across the street from that property that owns that. Have them maintain it and have us, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Senstock, 31698 San Juan. I listened to your comments and so on the issue of the grass cutting and maintenance of the bike path, and you completely missed the point. Yeah, every one of you had some reason why it was okay to go with Huron-Clinton. Yep, let's do it. Oh, they're better, they're this, they're that. The point I was making is you told us you were going to go out for quotes. Not to Huron-Clinton. If you wanted to make those points that you guys just made now, justifying it, you should have made those before you went for quotes. You should have said, I think we should stick with Huron-Clinton Metro Authority because they're going to do a better job, blah, 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 their government, whatever your reason. But you didn't. You said you were going out for quotes. Typical. As far as the DDA, has there been any discussion from the Sheriff Hackle, County Executive Hackle, about whether or not he's going to allow them to give you that tax money? I mean, he indicated in the paper several times that he's very supportive of getting access to the lake and making us Macomb County the lake county of the state, I guess. Whatever, he's for it. So have we heard? Probably not. On another issue with the DDA, I noticed that you approved the minutes for that public hearing. There was 18 people that actually spoke. There was a significantly larger number that were here that night. And I guess I just want to comment that I've heard some rather nasty rumors that the supervisor and the clerk both referred to the people in the audience as scum. Because we asked to come in and talk about a downtown development district that's going to take money from our fire department. Well, I was one of the people that's listed in the minutes here. So anytime you guys think I'm a scumbag, let's compare education. Let's compare any measure you want, and we'll see who comes out ahead. But to refer to people because they live in a trailer park or are sitting in the audience as scumbags is not appropriate, and it's unforgivable. Moving on, and this is all part of the arrogant attitude that this board seems to have towards the citizens. I read you had a special board meeting of December 23rd at 4:30 p.m. And it was a closed session on top of it. Well, it was a closed session to discuss a lawsuit. How is that lawsuit getting resolved? Has it been resolved? Are you ever planning on telling us? Just because the insurance company's paying part of it or all of it, who knows? It seems to me that the residents ought to know that the improper actions of the township board at that time, I won't blame you guys, caused us to get sued for a lot of money. Are you ever planning on telling us how much it cost us or how much it costs our insurance company? Because we're going to pay for it. If the insurance company has to keep making out these payments, they're going to come back and they're going to raise our rates. Another issue that I have is there's an issue coming before the Planning Commission. It's for a 14 by 48 billboard, 70 feet high, at the exit to North River Road. Wow. So the Planning Commission had some second thoughts and reservations about it and sent it back to the Building Board of Appeals to ask them to take a look at, there was some problems with the definition of signs and what constitutes square footage of signs, and there was some other questions that the PC raised. Well, it went back to the Building Board of Appeals. Took them all of 10 minutes to decide all of these issues, and it came out during the hearing that our township attorney had issued an opinion which that attorney was well aware of. Actually, it's mentioned right in the minutes, but it had never been given to our Planning Commission yet. And so when I asked to see that attorney opinion, which was now public knowledge because it had been discussed at a public meeting, I was told that I couldn't have a copy of it because it apparently was some kind of proprietary or something. The attorney said we can't have it. You know what? We've had a process and a policy in this township for years of allowing anybody to see what's coming in front of the Planning Commission at the current Planning Commission. Very similar to what we do here with the township stuff that comes before you. Are we changing that now? Are we changing that, Adam? Because you're the one that made the decision. You guys are trying to run this board as though it's a little kingdom, it's a little fiefdom that you can just do what you want and don't keep it secret from the residents, and let's see if we can just go ahead and just do what we want. And oh, by the way, we're going to come and ask them for more money for a tax increase. Well, the residents are getting pretty pissed. I'm one of them, and I got a loud mouth. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot more than me getting pissed. at this board. So, mark my words. Be aware, you've been forewarned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. King.
Hi, Jim Keene, resident. As I leave my subdivision on these cold, snowy days with all this deep snow on the road, I have to drive rather carefully down the road. And I get to the corner and I'm listening to the radio and hearing of all the school closings. And I look to the left and I look to the right on the bike path. And every day that it has ever snowed, that bike path has been pristine and clean. So I think that the HCMA's done a wonderful job through the winter for us, and glad to see they'll continue. I think with a private contractor, we may have a snowy day and call them, and they're busy doing someone else's lot, and maybe we wouldn't take priority. But with HCMA, I see us taking priority every time. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. I'll do the best I can to address the issues. There were a couple of comments made relative to the DDA. So a point of clarification. A DDA does not have the power of eminent domain. The municipality has the power of eminent domain. They can exercise eminent domain to acquire property and give that property to the DDA. There's nothing in our plan that says we intend to do that, and I'm not aware of any time that this board of trustees or any other board of trustees has exercised eminent domain. As a matter of fact, in the time that I've been supervisor, in the construction of bike paths, we've faced a few residents who've said they're not interested in selling us 1.5 to 3 feet of property to put in a path. We've altered the path direction, we've altered the path design. If we're not exercising eminent domain on 1.5 of property that's on the side of the road, I don't see where this board is going to exercise that option. But it's important for the residents to know, number one, a DDA does not have the power of eminent domain, and number two, this township board does have the power of eminent domain regardless of whether there's a DDA or not. But there has to be legitimate, good reasons to exercise that right. And again, to date, I'm not aware of any time that this board has exercised that right, whether it's us personally or a prior board. A DDA cannot levy 2 mills. The Board of Trustees can address that issue, and 2 mills could be levied, but it's the Board of Trustees that has that authority. Again, a DDA does not have taxing authority. The question was asked about the firefighters. Have we signed a contract yet or not? There are 2 methods by which we can reach an agreement with firefighters. One is through a negotiation process, in which case we discuss the issues, go back and forth until we agree on the issues. We write them down, we read them, we say, yes, we agree, there's the issues, and we sign that contract. But if through the negotiation process we're not able to negotiate a contract and we find ourselves at what you might say is an impasse, Act 312 is the public act in the state of Michigan that addresses the issue. Public safety officers, namely police and fire officers, aren't allowed to strike for obvious reasons. There's a very valuable public safety function that they perform. So if the employer, in this case the township, and the bargaining unit, the firefighters, can't agree, there's a specific written formal process where each side presents their information and their argument before a third party, an arbitrator. That arbitrator listens to both sides through a process without going into all the details, and at some point he or she renders a decision. Once that decision is issued, it's effective immediately. The terms of that decision are effective immediately. Putting those terms into a contract and signing that contract is kind of secondary to the decision. So let's say, as an example, let's say that the township said, we believe that the firefighters should have a 1% pay cut. And the firefighter said, we believe we should have a 1% pay increase. The arbitrator listens to both sides. He's not empowered to compromise or mediate. He either says you get a 1% pay raise or a 1% pay cut. He issues his decision. That decision was issued December 19th. And whichever it is, effective December 19th, it's either one or the other. That wasn't the issue, but as an example. So the decision has been rendered. We've met both with legal counsel as well as the firefighters to implement that because through that process, no matter how much we try to make things clear, someone says, well, I think this word means this and not that. So we've been working to implement that. For example, one of the new components in this is that we look at a 28-day cycle for firefighters. Well, we want that to coincide with pay periods because we're paid every 2 weeks. So we said, all right, well, let's implement that portion of it effective this date and address this period of time from so-and-so. So the short answer to your question, do we have a signed contract? No. The longer term answer, though, is we do have a decision, and we're in the process of kind of doing the housekeeping to assemble a contract. And that contract will be in place roughly for about 2 years. It's a 3-year period, but it took us a year to go through the 312 process. There was some mention about a sidewalk ordinance, and I think also some clearing of sidewalk along Ballard, along the senior center. That certainly seems to be an area that the township should be maintaining. I'll talk to our maintenance folks to see about that. A resident had mentioned that when we discussed the path maintenance in the past, as opposed to saying that we would go out for bids, we should have said we're going to stick with HCMA. The fact is, the reason we were going out for bids is because we were approaching the winter season, and HCMA had sent us a letter simply saying we're not going to do the work. They didn't give us an option of saying we'll continue a relationship. This board discussed the fact that we would like to continue that relationship, but that wasn't an option. So when we discussed this, I brought it to the Board of Trustees and said, what do you want us to do? We'll explore all options. We'll see if we can purchase equipment and have our own employees perform some of the work. We can see if we can hire a third party to do the plowing. And this board might remember, and the resident might remember, that regarding the mowing during the summertime, there was a discussion where we thought if the Department of Roads is going out for competitive bids, they're likely to find a company that's the lowest bidder. We can at that time ask that company what their cost would be to do the mowing. During that process, we met with HCMA. It was then that they said, well, let us give a proposal, and that was a change in their approach to us. So when this board directed me to get bids, sticking with HCMA was not an option, but I did tell the board at that time that we were still in discussions with HCMA with the hopes to try to continue that. Have we heard about the county opting out of the DDA? The short answer is no. There isn't a process by which taxing authorities tell us that they will opt in. If they do nothing, they're a part of the DDA. Their taxes would be the growth would be captured by the DDA. It's certified